Good morning. I'm Wendy Otway, editor of FME, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this morning's webinar, wherever you are in the world. This webinar is brought to you by Fire Middle East magazine in partnership with TLX Technologies. And this morning, our speakers will uncover the mysteries of IoT, the Internet of Things basics, for fire suppression systems, understanding the impact of connectivity, data collection, and monitoring. A little about TLX Technologies first. For over 20 years, they've been the pioneer in the design and production of actuation solutions and integrated technologies for the global fire suppression market. Their actuators, solenoids, and valves are customized to each client's needs, meeting regulatory standards, and are fast, durable, and reusable. TLX Technologies is excited to be introducing their explosion-proof actuator, liquid level sensor, and other integrated technologies at the upcoming Intersect show next month in Dubai, where both TLX and Fire Middle East will be on their stands. Looking forward to seeing you. So do come and find us and ask questions if we don't answer them all this morning. Just a little bit about our two speakers this morning. Miguel Coll is a consultant who brings over 16 years of experience in the fire safety industry, where he led portfolios for fire detection, suppression, and design for critical risks, such as power facilities, data centers, wind turbines, etc. In addition, he has worked on several digital innovation projects, including IoT and connectivity. Dennis Jensen is the Business Development Manager, Advanced Products at TLX Technologies. He has experience collaborating on OEM product development, network infrastructure, software, web development, data communications, and monitoring systems. Dennis is looking to help the fire suppression industry leverage data to improve operations and solution value to all industry segments. So now I'd like to ask you to welcome our two speakers and enjoy their presentation. Over to you, Miguel and Dennis.
Thanks a lot. I guess we'll just dive right into it. Data collection, connectivity, and monitoring have already started changing many industries. Manufacturing equipment is monitored on a global scale to avoid unplanned outages and increase staff efficiency, while at the same time decreasing their stress levels, and also to add value to operations. Even general consumers are excited about this technology, using an app to hail a ride, find an available scooter nearby, even getting updates from your home appliances. This technology is proven, reliable, and accessible. Experts are predicting billions of additional connected devices are going to be coming online in the future, and that future does include the fire suppression applications. Next slide. Beyond the industries that are leveraging data and connectivity, it's also important to examine what information would be valuable for fire suppression stakeholders. Fire panels do offer rudimentary monitoring, but much more needs to be known. By taking a closer look at different solutions, system installations, operations, and maintenance, we can see data points that would offer incredible value if the information was visible in a timely fashion. The goal is to leverage monitoring to reduce risk, limit liability, increase value of investments, and highlight paths to future system improvements. But before we dive too deep into it, I think it'd be good to maybe take a step back and examine where the industry is today. Miguel?
Thank you, Dennis. Good morning, everyone. The fire industry today is in a situation where we have very advanced fire detection technologies, well connected, so we can today monitor fire detection systems from remote. We can look at parameters on the different elements of the fire detection systems. We can do a lot of predictive maintenance. We can change the parameters of the elements. So virtually the fire detection side of the fire safety technologies today is well integrated in the smart buildings. When we look at the fire suppression systems, we have a little bit of a different situation. So the fire suppression systems protecting critical infrastructure, they are more mechanical equipments, and they have in the past been provided some electronic monitoring, but they are not at the stage where they could be today with the technology that is available. So let's take a look. For example, the gas suppression systems that are being monitored by pressure. So in the best case, those pressure measurement equipments connected to each of the tanks, they would indicate if there is a low pressure in that tank, and they would, in best case, be connected in a serial connection like the one we see here on the top. And if there is a low pressure or a discharge of the system, there'll just be an open circuit that will show in a panel that the system is on low pressure or has been discharged. So that information is very rudimentary today compared to what could be done. So let's say if one of those tanks would be on low pressure, we would just get an indication that there is something wrong with that circuit. So all the failures in a system today kind of provoke the same type of alarm. So that means a technician needs to go on site and explore what is the failure. Has been an accidental discharge and all the cylinders are empty, or it's just one of the cylinder that is low pressure, but all the events will produce the same type of alarm. In other type of monitoring today, we have in the halocarbons, for example, that the liquid level is being measured, like in the picture you see here. So there'll be a tape that goes in a deep tube and gets impressed with the level of content of the tank. So once a month, once a quarter, technician would look at the level, which is an indication in the length of the tape being impressed by the liquid, and that would then brought on a table and related to the temperature in the room, that would give an indication of the content of that tank. And as you can imagine, there are so many variables in the observation of the technician, in the measurement of the temperature, in the accuracy. That data has been interpreted on a table. So the number of kilograms or pounds that would be resulting from that calculation would be very, I would say, ballpark what the reality is on the content in that individual tank. So no accurate information in case of a failure, no addressability. So we don't know which is the tank that has a problem. And we know the information when it's already there. We know the information when there is already an alarm, and that system is already out of operation if there is an alarm. So if we go to the next slide, please. Today, technology would allow to collect a number of different variables in a system that would allow us to redefine the way we monitor and service our installation. So, for example, we could measure pressure. We could compensate that pressure with the temperature in the same sensor. We could measure liquid level electronically. We could have, of course, the precise location of each of the cylinders. So when an event is recorded, we would know exactly which is the cylinder that has the problem and what is the problem, because the alarms would now tell us low pressure, discharge, whatever. Maintenance tracking. So today, NFPA 2001 requests that the location of the actuator on the cylinder is being monitored by the panel. So there'd be switches being integrated into the actuator that would tell us if the positioning of the actuator is the right one on the tank. So all of those variables added to some innovations that TLX is working on today, like recording elaborated data on what's going on those actuators, like measurement of voltage and current through the solenoid, or information about the movement. So accelerometers are integrated into the actuators, and all of that is being recorded. So an event recorder will have all that information stored. So if there is a discharge, an accidental discharge, if there is an actuator that is not properly positioned, all of that information will be available, and there is the possibility to have all of that information in the cloud, being accessed and being reported to facility managers or service companies. And one aspect, Dennis mentioned that before, but I think it's key to all of this data that is being collected. Today, we can look at that data with an accuracy which is probably 10 to 100 times more accurate than the technologies that we use today.
Mm-hmm.
There is a tremendous reliability. So those sensors and those connections are secure, and they have a high level of efficiency, and reporting if something is wrong. We have accessibility, so from everywhere we would be able to monitor and have information 24/7 on the status of the system protecting critical infrastructure, and above all, it's accessible in economic terms. So it's not that these technologies would be comparable to the cost of the system. They are a fraction of the cost of the system. So it makes absolutely sense to have this intelligence added to each and every system. Next one, please. And we're talking about data collection and data analytics, and immediately we get into the concept, okay, data needs to make sense. Data, if we just collect data for the sake of collecting data, that could be meaningless. But if we collect the right data and we process that data, advanced analytics, as we're showing here, we process that data to give us the information which is relevant for the monitoring or the services that we want to give, the value can be huge. So let's take based on this McKinsey and Company model, let's take a couple of approaches. We can collect data, and that data can be analyzed to show us that there is a behavior that will require a service on a system, so a condition-based maintenance. Or we can collect data, analyze that data, and compare that data with databases of similar events. So that's what we call here in the middle advanced troubleshooting. So if there is an asset which is more complex, that could be an industrial process in a manufacturing industry. That could, analysis of that data could be well positioned to prevent that machine or that process being out of service. Or going all the way to very complex predictive maintenance, where the wearing and the use of some key parts in a machine would be analyzed. Imagine a jet engine turbine that would be giving data on the wearing and the aging of some specific components, so that a maintenance on that engine would be done only when necessary, and not taking that very expensive asset out of operation for predictive maintenance. So as you can see, different levels of processes can be defined on data analytics. And we're showing here 3 very different models in the complexity that are using exactly the same technology. exactly the same type of sensors measuring physical events and being transmitted to a central location. So the same type of data analytics can give us from low to very high complexity type of processes on the background. Dennis, over to you.
Great, thanks, Miguel. So not everyone's familiar or comfortable with different types of connectivity. And, that is understandable and fine, right? You don't need to know how to design a plane in order to fly in one. It was still the idea of leveraging things that are valuable to kind of improve your life. So I thought it would be helpful to review some basic ideas to show where connectivity comes into play in order to make sensor data more accessible. So we'll start, at the tanks and with the sensing deployed. And let's face it, there isn't a lot of interest in adding any wiring to the tanks and to the fire panel. It really is just a big hassle. Instead, we can leverage wireless technologies. We've got some listed here: LoRa, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Bluetooth low energy, and of course there are others. That type of path is going to take the data to a gateway or separate hardware device that redirects the data flow out to the internet and to a cloud server. That path will probably most likely be over Ethernet for those of you who want to look a little deeper at the technology. Cellular could also be leveraged, but the value is that it gets to a server in the cloud where the data is stored. And then from there, the data ends up getting rendered to a dashboard or an app to kind of, that's really where the value gets shown. And I understand that talking about it without a visual can be, we'll call it even more confusing, but we'll jump to the next slide where we've got a kind of basic diagram. So again, now we're starting on the left side with the tanks and the different type of sensing that can be deployed. Whether it's pressure sensing, an agent level, a temperature, there's a ton of valuable data that can be collected. And as we move to the right, you'll see that list of, from LoRa, Zigbee, Bluetooth, etc. Those are just different wireless protocols. You can kind of select which one, again, depending on what you're looking to accomplish. But the net is still the same. It's going to go to that hardware device, the labeled gateway. And we can call that kind of like a data aggregator from all the different tanks. And so from there, like we discussed, it would go out via Ethernet, possibly cellular, but the destination is going to be the cloud. And that's where the value magic happens, right? You can see just with some of the call outs from there, you've got like a monitoring dashboard, so you can see kind of live up to the minute what's going on, but you're not going to necessarily be staring at a dashboard every minute of the day. So another value proposition is to be able to receive alert messaging, either alert messaging on the dashboard or an email alert or a text message, SMS, that type of thing. Another layer of value that I think is critical, especially when you look at the maintenance and all the other things that can happen, you can't keep track of all that stuff. Everybody's life is just too busy to remember what happened 6 months ago, 4 months ago, sometimes even 3 weeks ago, depending on how stressful things are. But you can get reporting that's going to show you, alerts, maintenance being done, etc. It's all the value propositions that could be out there. Now that we have kind of a better idea, thanks to the diagram of just how it could work, I think we can dive into some use cases for the different market segments. If we could jump to the next slide. So OEMs work incredibly hard to create a valuable fire suppression system that is also differentiated from competitors. Intelligent data collection will actually support product improvement because understanding issues faced by customers, before they complain or before they ask for an updated product or new rollout is key, right? You just don't want to deal with that angst as an OEM with unhappy customers. So making that investment into monitoring infrastructure has a lot of layers of value. Another layer is the fact you can create a new revenue stream, right? It's the idea that you're going to provide value and customers are going to want to invest in that because of what they're getting, right? Being able to see up to the minute, they could be anywhere in the world and not hope that their fire suppression system is working. They can look at their phone, check their email, look at their dashboard, they'll know that it's working. And I think that takes a lot of stress off of people. But for me, I think one of the best ROI factors is liability. And that relates to, I heard a use case a few months ago. So looking at, and I think Miguel mentioned it earlier, shock sensing being one of the critical things. A forklift banging into a tank, causing an actuation, a misfire. Well, as you can imagine, the employee is not going to want to run to the front office and said, hey, they caused hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of damage. There's just going to be an empty set of information. No one's going to say anything. So from the facilities management and building owner, they'll be on the phone to the maintenance company, the installers, they'll be talking to the OEM. They're going to file that warranty claim. But now if we roll back and take a look at the dashboard, we've collected data on what happened, right? We've got that shock sensor time and date stamped. We know when it was actuated, and we can actually relate both of those things together. So now from the OEM's perspective, the maintenance installer company, and even from the facilities person, right? They know based on the facts what really happened. And that just sets an even stage for everybody, right? There's no angst back and forth. We can look at the facts and move on. Let's move on to another case, move on to another segment.
So if we have fire companies that are designing, installing and servicing systems all over the world. These companies today usually hold a maintenance contract with a facility manager, with an end user. So in the event of being able to monitor data remotely, the amount of value that can be generated for an installer and for the end user by using IoT is huge. I mean, Dennis mentioned already some of the events that could be recorded for the authorities having jurisdiction or for insurance companies. So if that forklift hit the cylinder, there'd be an impression on the horizontal axis of the accelerometer, and that would be enough evidence to make a case. At the same time, if there would be a vertical acceleration in that accelerometer, so forces would indicate that there was a manual activation of the system. In the same case, a solenoid would have voltage and current if that was actuated by the panel. And if it wasn't actuated by the panel, there wouldn't be a data log showing voltage and current. So the amount of information that can be gathered on that type of event is huge and so valuable. And there's also the other aspect, which is preventing the systems from going out of service because of a failure. So today, and I want to mention a very specific case that I think adds a lot of value for the installers and a lot of value for the end users, which is the early detection of failures or micro leak detections. So imagine you're monitoring pressure and temperature or liquid levels through an electronic liquid level device. And today we're able to measure not the 5 or 10% that the standards request. Today we are able to measure deviations of 0.1%. And if that measurement repeats in the next hour or in the next day, we can confirm that there is a micro leak in that tank. So imagine what would happen today. You wouldn't have that information until that leak became a 10% loss in that specific tank, and that opened a pressure switch or a connected pressure manometer and gave an alarm to the panel. But there would be no information today. So a service technician should go on site, explore what is the failure, identify which is the cylinder, identify what type of cylinder, what type of agent, and then go back, prepare a spare, and come back and resolve the issue. Mm-hmm. All of that time, that system was out of order because that system is already in alarm. So most probably that system went out of operation, maybe putting an industrial process out of operation or out of protection. If we have data connectivity, the event changes drastically. So we would be able to detect that leak at the micro leak level. So analytics would give us how long that micro leak would take in order to bring that specific cylinder in alarm. So it can be 2 weeks, it can be 2 months. That analysis would be given to the service company, and the service company might decide, okay, I need to service that cylinder today, and or I have 3 weeks to service that cylinder. So I can wait until I'm around that specific site, or until I have my next scheduled maintenance on that site. But above all, it changes the customer experience drastically, because instead of having a customer calling and saying, hey, I have an alarm, the system is out of operation, now it'd be the installer calling the customer and saying, hey, you know what, you have a problem in the second cylinder in the first row. Don't worry, a van is on the way with a spare and we'll repair that. So what are we doing here? We are changing the event in the customer's view from I found an error, an alarm in my system, to the installer company informed me that there is something wrong in my system, and they're going to come and repair it before it even goes out of operation. Second, we've changed 2 interventions. We replaced 2 interventions with 1, because now the full data on what type of cylinder, what type of agent, when will that go into alarm is available remote. So the installer company can go in 1 intervention and fix a failure that otherwise would have taken a couple of visits to resolve, and a few days with the system out of operation. So a full different game in the way we render services today, and from the customer experience, a full different type of service by having a more high reliability on the systems, and business continuity becomes then a lot higher, and there is the peace of mind that the system is being monitored both by the company that is doing the service and by my own people. So there is a number of values that can be given to different stakeholders in the change by using data analytics properly. If we go to the next. In the case of facility managers, the advantage, we mentioned some already, but the advantages are huge when it comes to industries that have distributed assets in remote areas. So power generation with substations all over the country, with difficult access in many of them, offshore, telecommunication shelters, data centers and data rooms that can be located wherever there is a small branch of a bank or a small manufacturing location. And first of all, the access to those sites being so expensive compared to the cost of the technology today, that this is a huge value for a number of different industries today. And above all, the situation of being able to prevent failures before they happen. I think all of this data collection, all of this advanced analytics on the data that we can collect, can position in the next couple of years the fire suppression industry at a level that is same as the other technologies that are part of smart buildings today. Dennis, over to you.
Thanks, Miguel. So this is probably a very impactful slide for me. I really believe that it's critical for everyone, all the fire suppression stakeholders, to join in this discussion, because changes are already happening in the marketplace. You've heard the rumblings. Some of the regulatory groups are already starting to, look at this and talk about it, and that's great. But everyone needs to be involved. For me, coming from the outside, I've seen the success that HVAC companies are having with their, building systems, their dashboards. They're getting a lot of integration. They're having a lot of great feedback. They're expanding, but it's not going to stop there. When you look at the science of how people work and the stress levels that we're all carrying, none of us are going to look at 20 dashboards a day. We're not going to look at 10. Probably not even 5. It's going to be a handful of them. So the companies who have already started, like in the HVAC market, they're going to look to expand their footprint. They're going to look to make more money, earn more value, and get more time with that customer. So when you think about it, hey, what's stopping them from adding aftermarket sensors to that fire suppression equipment so they can tunnel that data into their dashboard, right? So now that information is all available for the building managers, the facilities managers, and think about the impact that that's going to have on the industry, right? If you're an OEM system supplier, how much value are you bringing to the table when HVAC is coming over the top to add value, right? And for installers and maintenance people, that's another big challenge. So that could push most of the industry into commodity status. And what I fear is that when you get to commodity status, it's a race to the bottom for low price and horrible margins. So when we look at that, it's not investing in connectivity and data collection and everything else. It's investing in business protection and growth. So there's nothing stopping the fire suppression industry from being a leader, right? From coming to market with a dashboard system with valuable alerts. Miguel and I have kind of walked through for the different segments. There's a lot of value there. But when you look at this battle that could be taking off, there's a big question that I really want everybody to think about. What is your brand doing to deal with this seismic shift? Because it is coming, right? There's only going to be more markets with IoT and dashboards and data and value. It's not going to be less. And now I think we can kind of turn it over to the questions. Oh, and I should add that both Miguel and I are going to be at Intersect in Dubai. So if there's, additional questions, or you want to talk maybe more in depth, things that you didn't want to share publicly, stop by the booth or catch us on the show floor. We'd be happy to talk about it with you.
Good morning. Thank you, Dennis and Miguel, for your insightful and very informational presentation. I'm pleased to see that we still have many delegates still listening to us. Certainly, I can see how the IoT is going to improve monitoring and maintenance of fire suppression systems for fire engineers and facilities managers in their roles of protecting people and property from fire. Delighted to see that your presentations have inspired several questions this morning, which we will now have a look at, and I would ask you to address. Where do you see fire suppression of IoT systems having a big impact in the Middle East? That's a good random, broad question.
Should I take that one?
Yeah, just start off, Miguel.
Yeah, I think specifically for the Middle East, where we have so many systems installed and being not so easy to access. So if we look at the amount of power substations, and we look at the amount of telecom shelters, but also offshore operations coming from the LNG and the oil and gas, I think there is a huge value on having remote monitoring and being able to predict what is the status of that infrastructure before it comes to an out of operation. And in specific for the Middle East, we see now such a big number of innovations in different areas that are gonna carry suppression and have increased need for having reliable and permanent remote monitoring. I think that's the Middle East is going to be a key area for developing, IoT in fire and in general all type of connected and remote supervision related to fire safety.
And I might add, when I think about the Middle East, looking at the idea of, we'll call it regional business, everybody wants to grow their business. Nobody wants to shrink it, right? So when you look at a monitoring dashboard and the idea that you can look at all your customers and the challenges that they're having, the alerts that are coming in, the alarms, you can react, you can actually be more efficient with your staff. Now, there seems to be a global problem in two areas with hiring the great kind of staffers that get the work done, and then also being able to kind of pick and choose how they're allocated, right? Using your resources wisely. And when you have access to that data, you can do both. And, think about it, that now the installers that you have can be so much more efficient. They can handle more sites with less stress. You can even afford to pay them a little bit more. You'll have happier workers that are doing a better job much more efficiently, giving you the space to grow at better margins. Who wouldn't love that, right? And it's all that investment in knowledge, in the data.
So we will have happier personnel and higher profits possibly, and of course safer sites. Thank you. Are there real examples of IoT applications in firefighting business, or is this still underway? Is how soon how near is the growth happening, or are we very much at the beginning?
Well, Miguel, if I can start on this one.
Yep.
I see it as it's in process right now. We've talked about it internally that we'll call it the fire suppression industry moves incrementally. And so they've been kind of trapped into the same technology, forcing it to move a little bit further. But there's already movements like we talked about the liquid level sensor, and moving from tape to something that's digital. And once you're at that digital step, it's quite easy to move the information out. And when we take a look back, like Miguel went through, of all the other data that can be collected, now it's up to the industry. Hey, you know what, as suppliers, different companies are going to come with these smart sensor packages and ways to communicate. And it's going to be up to the OEMs, the installers, and even I would say the end customers. You have to speak up and you have to say, you know what, I want a dashboard. I want to know. I don't want to hope that my fire suppression system is working. I want to know. And I think that's going to be a big part of what's going to drive it. So, we might be at the beginning for fire suppression, but I think all the stakeholders are going to have a big influence on where it goes and how fast it adopts.
Yeah, if I can add, I think what we saw in Dennis' slide with all the different variables that can be collected on fire suppression systems today, I think there are some of those technologies that are already being offered by some of the manufacturers. So the full program that we showed in that slide, I think it's something that will happen in the next 1 or 2 years, as companies first of all have the technology available and the dashboards and the schemes that would allow the different stakeholders in the industry acquire the sensors and the technology connecting the sensors, and second, providing the commercial packages, the monetization models that would allow then installers and end users jump onto that type of services. So I think what we have here is the technology is available today. We are at the beginning of that era where we will monitor and be able to, service this type of systems with remote monitoring. So the technology is available today. Few companies are already offering some of those sensors. In 1 or 2 years, everybody will have one or the other solution for remote monitoring.
And to jump onto that, Miguel, good point, because I've seen the growth in other markets, and it's so interesting because when Miguel was talking, you got me thinking about one of the customers that I worked with that was a reluctant adopter, right? That they just couldn't see the value of, why would I look at this data and why would I care? But as they saw the value in the information and changed their operations and started to expand to more locations, I came to him 2 years later. I said, hey, you weren't really sure about this. What if I just took the dashboard away now? And he said, oh my God, you can't do that. We've changed the way we work now. We're so much more efficient and effective.
Yeah.
It becomes integrated. So the early adopters are going to get the biggest reward. And then you're going to see a race for the rest of the industry to play catch up.
Interesting. I hope that's addressed that question. I certainly understand it greater now. So we'd like to know more about how this adds value to the client. Now, I know you've already addressed that in some of the things you've said, but is there anything else you've got to add to that question? So the value added aspect.
Well, it's like when we were talking about the diagram of how the data would flow. So when you think about it, whether you're a facilities manager that you've got an app, you're out to lunch, and all of a sudden, ding, you get an SMS text message that you just had a tank go offline, that there's been, a leak or there's been a misfire. You're not, people aren't searching for you and wondering what's going on or if there's a problem at the building. Again, getting back to that, you don't have to hope your system is working, let alone, if you're on vacation, especially for small companies when there could be one person who really understands the fire suppression system. So it's that idea that you can take care of things anywhere you are in the world. And if you see an issue, if your maintenance company also has access to the information, they're on it. Or you can call them right there and say, hey, I'm emailing you. I just got this alert. Could you take care of it? You wouldn't be able to do that without that kind of remote visibility.
Exactly.
So now, is there additional data collection even necessary since the fire panel is already monitoring the system?
Let me comment on that. So the information being collected by the panel today is very elementary. It's very, very basic, and will give you the information that the system has a problem and needs to be maintenance, and most likely is already no longer fit for purpose, no longer operational. And we're talking here, we will collect data to detect deviations way before, long before they become a full alarm and system out of operation. So we're bringing the business continuity a level higher up, the reliability of the system a level higher up.
Dennis, do you want to add anything to that?
No, that really covers it.
I think you've covered this question, but maybe there is more you would like to add. Are the monitoring systems only applicable to unmanned facilities?
Well, for me, when I think about it, it's like when we had that discussion of the OEM kind of value proposition, the use case, that idea that staffers were there and, they might not understand the tanks, the system, the errors. Even if they create the problem, they sure as heck might want, probably don't want to talk about it, right? They don't want to put their job or position at risk. So manned or unmanned, that data needs to be known by the people who really understand system operations and understand the value of having that fire system protection. And if you're the building owner, you want that liability protection 24/7. Yeah. Now, I think that there's even more layers of value when you get, depending on how you share the information with like maintenance and installers and et cetera. But there is plenty there.
Of course, there is an increased value for unmanned, remote, difficult access facilities, but there is also a ton of value for the 24/7 manned facilities, because as Dennis mentioned, you have people on site, but sometimes those people are just security people, and they are nowhere near understanding what can be wrong on a fire suppression system.
We can't expect them to need to know that either. They are, as you say, they are security. So what you're talking about is the system is more secure because the information is greater and it doesn't require investigation. It's there in front of you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So is this type of technology only for new systems, or can it be retrofitted to current systems?
Well, I think it's if you look at the fire industry, I mean, every type of technology being produced for the fire industry is intended to remain in a building for 10, 15, sometimes 20 years. So I think if we look at the number of new systems being installed per year, and you compare that with the installed base is probably 10, 15 times bigger than the systems being sold every year. With that, I can tell you the appetite for every company producing technology is to produce technologies that go both for retrofitting as well as for new systems. So I would say in most or all of the cases that I've seen, these type of technologies are being developed for retrofitting and for new systems.
Yeah, and the thing when Miguel was talking, he gave me an idea that I think is kind of interesting. Traditionally, a lot of people have been looking to the OEMs to be the innovators, but when you look at the value of this information that can be collected, there's an opportunity out here for the maintenance, the installers. They can say, hey, you know what? I know that this data can be collected already. I'm going to create my own system, my own dashboard. I'm not going to wait for somebody to sell it to me. I'm going to bring that value to my customers, and that's how I'm going to gain share, right? Because now my service, pay me a monthly fee. You can sleep at night because, Acme, fire suppression's maintenance service is, awake watching your system. So I think it's going to be interesting that as, people become more comfortable with this, who's the first one to make, the big wave of innovation? Is it going to be the OEMs, or are we going to get regional players who take it on their own?
Yeah.
Certainly, I can see the benefit of installers being able to. It's value. It's going back to value added, isn't it? It's actually making the smaller companies who are providing services more efficient and more competitive, I think, as well.
Exactly. When I think about it, that idea that this monitoring dashboard now is providing a lot of information, and rolling back to something we mentioned briefly during the class, customers are going to spend so much more time looking at the dashboard and dealing with the data, 10, 100 times more than they look at the tanks. And now if you're the maintenance installer company, brand it with your logo, include the phone number. Now all of a sudden your team sees something and say, hey, I noticed that we had this alarm, or did you see that we did maintenance? Here, I'm just sending you a report about everything we've done over the last 6 months. Hey, you're eligible for this. Now all of a sudden it's really supportive. Almost this maintenance installer company can be insourced onto the facilities manager's team, right? Because they're offering that much value. It really changes the whole dynamic.
Yes, yeah, I can see that. Right, we have one more question, which is quite long, so bear with me. Right now, we could say that the official data source to confirm an alarm is the fire panel. What is the roadmap, and how close are we to transitioning into the IoT technology as the official data source for insurance companies, AHJs, and the likes?
Ooh.
That's a great question. Let me start by saying technologies being developed today are in parallel with the flow of information being directed to the fire panels, simply because if you touch the fire panel, then you need to have full approvals on every technology that you incorporate. But if you create sensors and technologies that run in parallel without touching anything of the installed approved technology, but just exchange information with the approved installed technology, then you can be, giving remote information so that alarms can be detected, service attended through the remote technology, and at the same time remain compliant with all the existing regulations. This is the situation today. Now, this question drives us to think what is going to happen, and what is happening now is that the authorities having jurisdiction, the approval agencies, the companies producing technology, they are all discussing how to implement all of these changes in the codes. So we're going to see a lot of dynamics in the codes in the next couple of years by getting closer to digital technologies and start accepting that, the panel would be one source of information, but the digital technologies would be a second source of information. And then most likely they'll be all integrated in different paths along the way. But the standards are, and this is probably the conclusion of the question, the standard is going to quickly adapt to also accept digital technologies being the source of information. And of course, that will require that the digital technologies go through different type of approvals. And the agencies that I've been working with, they are already looking at how to approve the digital technologies. So UL, BDS, LPCB, all of the approval agencies today are looking at ways to approve digital technologies in similar or the same schemes they have approved electronic and mechanical systems in the past.
Yeah, and Miguel and I have had some great conversations about different parts of the industry that are already talking about this. You look at the conversations that are starting with regulatory groups, but the thing that hit me when Miguel was kind of running through all the ways that this could move forward, a new way that this could jump out is through the insurance companies. Because as IoT, let's face it, there's, like we talked about, there's not going to be less IoT, there's not going to be less monitoring, there's only going to be more. And insurance companies love to press about not having to pay out. So what's a great way to do that? Don't hope that your fire suppression system is working and have people die and lose millions of dollars in loss that they have to pay out. Think about the insurance companies. It won't be long before they require this type of monitoring. They're going to want to know that you know exactly what's going on, and they're either going to charge you more if you don't, or they could possibly even require it for some coverage. It's going to be interesting.
So is TLX working with any of the codes and standards committees, with FM or UL, or even in the UK, LPCB? Have you got conversations going?
Well, Miguel, you mentioned your alarm, right? Was that one of them?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I think that there are conversations with different agencies, different bodies to kind of drive regulation towards the future. So there are, on the one hand side, trade associations producing guidelines on how to remote monitor fire installations, and at the same time the standards and the approval agencies are trying to adapt their codes, their testing protocols to welcome this type of information. TLX is talking to all of them, and I think every company working on IoT will early discover that the sooner they start discussing with the approval agencies, the better it will be, not only to get their product approved, but also to drive regulation towards, improving the way the regulations cover our industry.
And the way that TLX is looking to engage with the industry, we don't want to come into like, oh, hey, let's run the regulations around development related to data collection for years. But for all aspects of the industry, we rather just have the conversation, answer the questions. What do you need to know? Make your own decision. TLX is going to continue to work with different aspects of the industry on, we get into, custom solutions, and we have specialty items for the fire protection market. That's another segment of what we can do, right? But this gets into the bigger picture, and we want to help the industry to move forward.
Well, we've run out of questions, but I wondered if both of you would like to just sum up or add something that you haven't had a chance to say yet before we say goodbye.
Well, I think one final statement from my side would be IoT and collecting data, the relevant data with the relevant and advanced analytic of that data help the industry in, differentiation. So if companies go in and offering this type of services, will be able to differentiate themselves towards other companies that are behind. It helps make the systems more secure, safer, not only in the performance, but also in the view of authorities having jurisdiction and insurance companies and regulations. And then there is the value for the different pieces of the chain. Having visibility and being able to react and act before is adding value to every player in the value chain. So I think those three aspects are going to help this digital wave in the fire suppression towards these smart buildings.
Yeah, and for me, I would probably go back to the last slide that I presented related to, there's an opportunity for the fire suppression industry to, actively move forward for new technology adoption, dealing with regulatory, providing more value. But trust me, there are other industries that are hoping that we just sit back on our laurels and don't do anything, because they'll be more than happy to swoop in and be the dashboard for fire suppression and drive us into commodity status.
Oh, yeah.
I've been in industries that, through complacency, threw their profits out the window, threw their value out the window, and it's not pretty.
Well, I think I'd like to thank both, obviously, Miguel and Dennis. Thank you very much for your informational and inspiring presentation. And I'd like to thank all our delegates for joining us too. If you're going to be at Intersec in January, do visit TLX on their stand Geo9 in Hall 4, where both Dennis and Miguel will be present to answer your questions and discuss your needs. And we have Salwa Awad has thanked us for our presentation, so that's good news.
Right.
Thank you, Salwa. Yes, so Dennis and Miguel will be on stand Geo9 in Hall 4 at Intersec, so do go and say hello and get them to answer any more questions you may have, and of course discuss your needs moving forwards. And whilst in Hall 4, come and say hello to the FME team and pick up your copy of FME from our stand C11. So all it is for me to say is, again, thank you, Miguel and Dennis. Thank you for joining us this morning. Stay safe and well, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.